Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 26, I think, of Nutanix Weekly. And I say that kind of tongue in cheek because I was just giving Harvey a hard time about maybe not getting the numbers right. And I was, as I was making fun of him, I forgot what episode I was on. So let's go check. Yes, episode 26. Harvey Green, how's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
You know, good for a Monday. And I usually
Good,
love
even on
Mondays.
Monday.
I just think I'm to a point where I can't keep up. So as much as I love working, I'm starting to dread Mondays because it's just overwhelming.
Yeah, that happens. But it still seems like you're keeping up because people who can't keep up don't just dread Mondays, they dread every day.
Well, I have an ace in the hole. I can't get fired. So
That is a true statement.
in theory, the only thing I'm losing is money, I guess, whenever I just can't keep up. But
Yep. No matter how bad the main guy thinks you're doing, he's not gonna fire you.
well, he could. Well, I actually want to get demoted. I really do. I want to get demoted, and I want to just run around and talk tech with people like I used to. And I'm hoping someday that happens. Speaking of talking tech, we got Jira and John Spallone with us. Jira, how's it going?
Good. Hey, welcome.
Welcome back. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, man. It's my pleasure. Yeah, sorry to miss last week, but I caught the episode. You guys did great.
I think it was fun. We did miss having you. And as you pointed out very succinctly a minute ago, we didn't really talk about Nutanix that much. We talked about, virtualizing desktop workloads on a hypervisor, on cloud technologies. But you were right. I mean, we probably didn't weave enough Nutanix in there because we didn't have Jira with us. And that's where you keep it straight.
Got to give you a hard time somewhere. I love the episode actually, because it I'm sure we've all got horror stories right about customers, deploying pools with unoptimized images, right? And that just, there's no quicker way to tank your VDI deployment, right? I did love the reference to, in the opening last week, there was references to obviously me being gone, and then cars and car buying, and like me not being there, but I probably wasn't buying a car. And I laughed so loudly because I actually did while I was out.
Yeah.
We drove the family for a quick road trip to visit some family as a quick little end of summer whirlwind vacation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I drove the family in the minivan 1,000 miles, ill-advised perhaps. And then while we're there just killing time visiting family, I'm like, I kind of don't want to drive that minivan back. I'd rather have, CarPlay and adaptive cruise control and some other bells and whistles. So had the privilege of actually going and buying a newer version of the same minivan I already love from a Nutanix customer, and then was able to drive it back. So it just behind the wheel of my new to me minivan, listening to you guys saying, well, he probably wasn't buying a car, was just super awesome to listen to.
Well, what I love about that story, and the same thing happened to me. I had to go to Boston last week, and first of all, I go into the hotel lounge, and I know it's not a pooled virtual desktop, but it is kind of a pooled image, or an image that is supposed to be perfectly clean. And the computer in the lounge is stuck at the desktop startup, all those questions about privacy, and so I went over and clicked OK, and the whole thing crashed. It was exactly what we had just talked about, and you definitely don't want that in a virtual world.
Update management is hard.
But I think it's funny you bring up the car thing. I rented a Honda Passport. Passport. While I was up there, they gave me an upgrade. They didn't have any standard cars, and it had Apple CarPlay in it. I ended up not hooking up my phone to it because then I have to kind of reset it whenever I get done. But it's funny how it used to be what kind of wheels or what kind of performance the car had. Now it's what's the latest technology in the car. It makes me want it more than the car I have. Based on the way you described your scenario, it sounds like that was part of your decision anyway.
Yeah. But I've had CarPlay in my car for a couple of years. We didn't have it in the van, and so after I had to drive the van for a long time, I'm like, hey, we're going to get CarPlay in the van now too.
Yeah.
Well, and it's kind of the old story of like in the 90s, right? The car head units, which I was really into at the time, were so fancy, flip up screens, all that jazz. In the 2000s, right? It's literally just either the aux port or Bluetooth pairing, and I could care less what it does. And then now it's like, no, it's going to be my UI, right? It's going to be my smartphone display on that screen. I'll never even know what the manufacturer puts in there.
Yeah.
I'll never see it.
Yeah. I think some of the car makers already figured that out, and I think the rest of them are now figuring it out. It's all about the tech and the coolness of the car, not so much the horsepower, especially the next generation. Speaking of which, John Spallone, I think last week, John, you didn't give a what about cars, right? If I remember correctly.
It's not that I don't give a what. It's just that I know how to Google things and I know how to drive my car to the mechanic to work on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go, man.
Yeah.
I was raised in a house by 3 mechanics and I know nothing about a car.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Basically, my dad's like, "Get away from me, kid. You're bugging me."
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
I
I can relate to that, right? Like,
Yeah.
you're holding the flashlight wrong.
Yeah. The old flashlight.
Yeah, I have a similar thing where my father and my adopted dad were both mechanically. My dad was amazing, like amazing racing mechanic, and then my adopted dad was a tinkerer, but certainly very capable. And the patience for learning, actually, really probably more the patience for them teaching me was really missing. And so I kind of found my way into technology, maybe somewhat similar, but well, where do we go next after that? So I think
just
today
like cars,
we
technology
decided,
invades everything.
what's that?
Just like cars, technology invades everything, right? Like the last time my car was in the shop, it was because it threw a computer.
Yeah. Oh man. So I was at a BMW dealership this morning getting my 2001 little convertible toy car airbag replaced, because apparently the one that was in it had shards of metal inside the airbag.
Yes.
Supposedly that's a bad idea. I never found out, thankfully.
Yeah.
But it
Danger
was
confetti.
interesting to walk around the car lot, and there were no cars there. And I said something to the guy who ran the new car sales, and he was just, look, there's just no computer chips.
No chips.
And so there you go. That's that takes it all right back to this technology conversation.
Yes.
John's like, my car doesn't have a computer chip in it.
Oh no, it does. I know it does.
But you know what? I
One
bet it
less
only
thing to
has,
break.
but there was a study I saw recently, like a car from 10 years ago had a handful of chips in it. Now one has 80, like as many as 80 computer chips in it.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, speaking of advanced technologies, let's talk about Windows Desktop some more.
That was perfect.
Maybe this is the segue, right? So like cars get updates now, right? Desktops get updates, cars get updates.
They do get updates for sure.
Yeah, it's all about the feature packages you get in your car.
Right.
There we go. Nailed it, John.
Yeah, I just need leather seats. That's all I ever wanted, leather seats.
You can upgrade that without a computer chip.
Yeah, it is actually kind of funny, because now you get a car that has a lot of default technology in it, but still has cloth seats. Think about it.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah. All right. Well, today we decided, well, first of all, we had a plan to cover ServiceNow and Nutanix. I think we're going to push that one off a week or two. We had to reschedule, but today is part 2 of last week's conversation around optimizing the Windows OS, and specifically the desktop OS, I think, because now we're going to talk about the Microsoft Store. I'm a huge fan of the stores within the various operating systems, assuming the contents there. This blog was written by Jake Norman and Damian Gentile, I think is the way you pronounce the last name there, but they have this blog around the Microsoft Store, and I'm curious to see what you guys think about how relevant it is to have to think through the Microsoft Store in your virtual computer deployment, specifically Windows Client OS, but maybe even the server OS. You guys run into this before?
Yes. It's funny. I guess I am kind of weird. I've been tinkering with things for so long now that the very idea of like a store for a certain manufacturer is intriguing for me for my users, but not intriguing to me at all for my usage. I would rather go and find my own things rather than have them be centrally located, even though I know that there are safeguards and things in place to make sure that things are the way they're supposed to be.
I pulled up on the screen here. This is the first time I ran into it. First time I touched Windows 10 in a pooled deployment world. And I thought someone was joking when they told me Candy Crush was installed by default, but for a while it was installed by default. I don't know who at Microsoft thought that was a good idea, but
the person counting the money that they were sending them.
Yeah, how much money can we get with Candy Crush? Now, Harvey, the comment you made about the Windows Store and installing your own stuff, I think that's what we're trying to prevent, right? Is those uneducated users installing things.
Correct.
Especially from that Microsoft store.
Well, that's just it. Do you use the Windows Store even on your endpoint at all, or do you still go out and just start Googling around trying to find whatever it is you're looking for?
I still go get it. I am more of a from the source kind of guy. And I know that the Microsoft Store and other stores like that are just kind of aggregated, which is great for users, right? Don't get me wrong. I know why they're there. I know why they exist, and they make plenty of sense. It's just not my preference for me.
John, you were going to comment about, do you trust what's in the Microsoft Store?
I think as far as storefronts are concerned, Microsoft, I personally put it at the lowest. There's absolutely nothing in there I trust. Nothing.
Is it a content thing, or is it a trust thing, or both?
There's just, I mean, it's got the core apps in there, but you do a search on Google Apps and you'll pull up 15,000 apps, and it's like, Billy Bob created one that's a soft book on how to use Gmail in Windows with Chrome. And it's like, why is this even an app? Why is this even allowed as an app? It's not an app.
Right.
But yeah, it can be dangerous. I think the other thing too is a lot of this stuff, and correct me if I'm wrong, but majority of the stuff that comes out of the store is more of that Windows personalization look and feel for the user than it is from a business standpoint. So if I'm loading in, say, Netflix, it reacts differently than what Netflix is installed as the Netflix plugin that you download from their website. So it's just, when we're talking from a business standpoint and building out images, I stay away from the store as much as possible.
Well,
that's interesting because you're supposed to be able to, the idea is that you're supposed to be able to trust it more because they're supposed to be vetted and published through Microsoft. So that's interesting that you say that. I guess I won't say that I agree or disagree because, like I already talked about, I don't really mess with the store at all. I'm interested to know Jaira's opinion though, since John and I have already poo-pooed all over it.
In general, yeah, I tend to avoid them. For mobile, right, you can't really help it there.
Right.
But from a desktop setup, yeah, if it's the same app either way, I tend to usually go get it from the publisher's website. Like whatever it is, like 7-zip or Notepad++, I'll just go get that.
Yeah.
Because A, I know where to get it, and B, I often would prefer not to have the store between me and the publisher. That's totally just a power user. Maybe I'm not the right target audience for a VDI desktop, a orchestrated VDI desktop. But I don't want an app store approval process between me and a bug fix if I need it, or if I need to stay on an older version. I don't want that background forced upgrade. But that's me. I think the only things I've bought on the Microsoft Store are Minecraft, and the preview for the next gen Windows shell is on there, and it's actually pretty good. Like if you want like the old school like cmd.exe and PowerShell and the next gen Windows shell all in one window, it's pretty good.
Don't hide from me. I know you're a big Candy Crush guy.
I honestly kind of wonder if between the Candy Crush stuff and like Solitaire for Windows 10, at least initially, was like a paid app or like paid upgrades. And I'm like, I wonder if the business unit really feels that's a net positive, right? Compared to all the negative PR that the Windows App Store gets. Or like I hate the way every time I reboot my gaming desktop, Teams is reinstalled. And I'm like, Teams is fine. If you want to use Teams, go for it. But I never need it on this PC. And I can't tell Microsoft to quit putting it on there.
So guys,
I'm sorry, real quick. And one thing I compare it to is, especially from like the Microsoft world, and like you brought up about the phones, we're stuck with those markets within our mobile devices. But it's like a Samsung. If you have Google and you have a Samsung phone, you get pushed to both markets. It's like go to the Samsung store or go to the Google store. I personally go to the Google store because I know Google's doing more in-depth checks and balances on it. But when I'm looking at Microsoft, it's like, okay, I can go directly to the vendor and load their software, or I can go to Microsoft Store.
Yeah. So guys, this is my new Surface. It's actually a really old Surface. I reset the other day, and I've only installed, to the best of my knowledge, 2 applications. One's the Citrix Workspace app, and the other is Office 365, the installed apps, which is a bunch of apps, really. And I went in because I'm trying to live only in what I would consider a secure model, which I'm only allowing apps to be installed from the store. I went in and changed this the other day, basically creating a secure Microsoft Surface. I didn't even install a Chrome browser. I just left it with Edge. And then I jumped in here to show you guys this, and I was like, hey, what does it show is installed? And then I saw all this stuff. And what I realized is a big chunk of it came with the OS, and some of it is actually showing up as applications from Citrix Workspace app. And I forgot that those things showed up that way. Not really sure what we would talk about here, other than they show you guys, what do you guys think of this concept? Like, how far do you think I'm going to make it before I end up turning this off and start, getting stuff off of the various portals that have apps laying out there?
I mean, I guess the first answer that I think of to that question is the first time you go to a customer site and want to actually troubleshoot and or fix something, because you'll need more than what you have in front of you.
Yeah. But what am I going to need? PuTTY and Telnet and Ping. And I got some of those things. Telnet's going to be part of Windows. And so is the, command prompt, PowerShell.
So I think you'll be fine to a point. Like the base store installs, basically it's bloatware. It's bloatware for the desktop. You've got the OneNote that's installed as part of that. So it's the desktop version of it. Whereas if you're running the Office, that's the full blown version. Then you'll get 2 Office OneNote icons. So it does break down with the user. The other thing is the phone, the telephony setup that gets loaded on the Windows desktop. I mean, it really comes down to, I don't think as a basic user, you're really going to see those things. As an administrator and somebody who gets in and builds desktops, you're kind of like, I want that stuff cleared off. I don't even want that loaded as a process that could be running in the background, could do anything other than allowing me to focus on what I need, all the resources of that laptop device or whatever to do for my daily job.
Hey, John, would you be in favor of during the install process, Windows pops up all their apps that are built in and allows you to uncheck them all and just put on exactly the ones you want?
It would be great. Never happened, but it would be great.
Yeah.
I mean, because you consider most devices people are buying today, they're buying at the store. It's already got everything loaded. It's not like can you even put a CD-ROM in anything anymore? I mean, so, I mean, really, you're stuck to what the manufacturer's putting on a device.
Yeah. And Jira, just so we don't get too far off the topic of the podcast here, why does this matter to a Nutanix user?
I was trying to, I was skimming the article to kind of review those pros and cons. It seems like one real downside is the feature / bug, like working as designed, right? Of store apps that can sync and follow the user across desktops with their Microsoft login. you could hit a scenario where those things are triggering to come down from the cloud, like every user login, right? For non-persistent desktops, right? So I'm Jira, I go to log into random desktop, 1, 2, 3. It doesn't have the apps that Microsoft thinks Jira's bought for his desktop. So quick, let's reinstall those real fast before Jira logs in so that they're there. But now I see slow logons and now I'm calling the help desk, right? So it's someone else's problem and this is just spiraling.
Yeah, I think even worse than that, honestly, is the fact that when things like that, not only are you as a user seeing slow logins, but more importantly, your environment, your finite set of resources, because nobody has anything that's unlimited, right? You got a finite set of resources, and they're being consumed to do these types of things, install these types of programs that are supposed to be there, or go through making sure that they're updated, doing an update check, and all these things, right, that are all taking CPU and memory time away from what you actually want them to go for. So that's the big reason behind making sure that they're optimized, which is, of course, I guess bringing together the whole reason they did the post. But I think that's something that gets lost on a lot of people, is that they're not looking at this as something that's sucking away from their overall performance, and not only by user, but overall for their finite set of resources.
Going back to the car analogies, would this be like buying a really nice luxury sports sedan or sports car and then putting low octane gas in it because you're never gonna get the performance out of it if you put a bunch of junk in it,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that, and you're carrying around 300 pounds worth of garbage in the trunk that you could easily just get rid of.
That was my thought. Yeah, you're knocking the sports car for you're knocking the sports car for like the cargo capacity, right? Like, oh, this one doesn't have the roof rack. Like, well, yeah, you shouldn't want a roof rack for this,
Right.
Is this an argument? I mean, I'll ask you guys as the more day in, day out VDI architects, is this more of an argument for, hey, like revisit Windows Server as the desktop host versus, kind of the more tendency to bloat desktop OS?
So we talked about that a little bit last week, and more than likely the server OS is going to be much leaner and better performing in general, especially when you start talking multi-user worlds. The problem we have, Jira, there is application vendors don't get it, and so they don't care to try to even support a server OS, and they use that as a scapegoat anytime there's an issue with the software, and you're back to having to put it on top of the Windows desktop OS where they've officially certified it.
That's true. Yeah, same kernel, but different branding strings, and so the installer hangs up.
Yeah. Well, let's jump back to the blog, and let's talk about what a UWP is, which is Universal Windows Platform App. I used to listen to a podcast called Windows Weekly, and they must have had like 10 episodes in a row talking about UWP and whether it was going to work or not. Are you guys familiar with the concept of UWP?
So yes, familiar with it. Again, don't use it much. Don't put a whole lot of stock in it. But I guess I'm not necessarily choosing to use or not use. That's happening way before it even way before the software even makes its way down to me.
Well, so UWP, right? That's the idea that an application can run in the tablet mode, or this Windows 8 world, really, if you want to get down to it. As well as the legacy x86 world, as well as maybe go across other platforms like Microsoft Phone. Chuckle. I was really pulling for Microsoft Phone. I really was. But nonetheless.
Well, Nokia is coming back, though.
Nokia is coming back. I think those guys are going to be the smart one out of the whole thing. Whatever they sold off, they didn't really need, and whatever they had left, they're turning it into something.
Yep.
But did you guys ever really get engaged with the UWP app concept, and what are your thoughts on how that works?
So from my standpoint, not really, because the image management that I've dealt with has always been virtualized from the desktop, and the approach I've always had out of the gate was we're knocking this stuff off. You know, we're not allowing it out there. You don't see many, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I haven't seen many virtual desktops of desktop OS go into a tablet mode while a user's connected.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly that would vary a lot by use case, but I agree with you, John. I don't see that often somebody taking their, you know, their desktop or laptop into the tablet mode. I mean, I've got a laptop that's touchscreen, a laptop that's not touchscreen, and I think I use them both the same, right? I don't think I use the touchscreen on the laptop any more than I do on the one that just doesn't have one at all. So,
But I think in this world, though, I think it's even more. It's not even that, right? Where you'll never see somebody put a VDI into tablet mode, right? It just there's no
Right.
such thing.
Yeah.
Right. This
And
doesn't happen.
I may have led you guys down the wrong path because as I read further in the article, right, my world of universal Windows platform app was all about, you know, mobile form factor, tablet form factor, desktop form factor, worked on all of them. This really jumps into more of a multi-user application versus a single user application world, which again, when you start talking about VDI and multi-session VDI, it becomes a whole nother, you know, do you even touch these things with your VDI on running on Nutanix world, or you just stick with the x86 world?
Yeah, this is kind of a little bit what I was alluding to before, is, you know, with this choice being made way before the software makes it all the way down to me. But you know, it's a good thing to be able to use the same app across single user, multi-user type environments. A good thing to not have to go through and do all of the other things that we used to do to try to make it so that it could be multi-user or as multi-user as possible. You know, set install. So, you know, being able to utilize that all in one string and not have to do all of the other crazy things we used to have to do is definitely a plus. I guess I don't know. Maybe I'll give it a lot of credit here. Let's see if this works. Maybe it's so good at this point that I just don't even know it's there. And that's why I don't have a very strong opinion on I love this, because I don't see it doing anything.
I think you don't know what's there because it's not there. Go ahead, John.
Right.
So I know from my own personal standpoint, you know, when I got my Surface Book, I logged into PowerShell, and, you know, as you go through this article and it's covering the packages are loaded, I removed them. I got it out. It's the same approach I would take from building out an image from VDI. I don't want a user logging in, and that first time, going back to that active setup, that first time connection, you know, why are we going to stand up an image for a user, allow them to auto configure Xbox and the Xbox app configuration for a user of a virtual desktop, or what's the other one here? Zune. Zune is still in there. It is still in there. Why is Zune Player still a package in this loading? It's ridiculous. So what I think is we're taking this approach of marrying what we do from administrators to really tighten up that image, and then leveraging the back end of Nutanix of handling that for the full efficiency. So I really think that that's what it is here, is just taking that image and saying, we're tightening it down. We're making it as clean and crisp for every user to be efficient, to run. And again, using your analogy here, instead of putting that cargo rack on the sports car, we're going to, I don't know, we're putting a spoiler on a sports car. I don't know. You guys tell me here. I mean, we're making that sports car so much better by having a better feature set, computer software desktop that runs in the Nutanix sports car. Yeah,
I think it's funny what you kind of were just describing made me think about something, and that's when I first start a new image, when I first open a laptop, when I first log in for the first time, on either of those situations, the first thing that I do is take stuff off of the machine. I don't go out and install programs. The first thing I do is go uninstall some stuff. And I think that kind of describes exactly what you were just kind of hitting on there. Is to you, it never even is an option to go put a roof rack on the sports car, because the first thing that you're doing is taking things out to make it lighter.
So Jaira, is my goal, let's pretend you're the CIO of Consortia? No, Contoso. Isn't that the Microsoft one?
Yeah.
Also, yeah.
Yeah, that's a heck of a company. You see that thing everywhere. Contoso, you're the
Prolific.
CIO there. Is the goal to get the applications that are baked in out for performance, or is these days the bigger goal to get rid of the possible security vulnerabilities that might live in those things?
Well, why not both?
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Well, I would say, isn't my job to minimize cost, maximize revenue, right? Reduce downtime. So all these things to align. I was having that thought in the background, like I'm glad these capabilities are here to control it, but fundamentally, I guess, I don't know, as an outsider and candidly not primarily a Windows user for my daily driver computing environment, but it applies to any OS, right? The presence of an app store doesn't necessarily mean that allowing end users to install apps in VDI is a good thing, right? Like it's probably less desirable for most environments, the same way it always kind of has been for virtual desktops, right? If there's an app that the business needs, like we can put that in the image and have a better, simpler, easier to manage life for admins and for end users, than letting users just install whatever they want to out of the app store, even though it's maybe a blessed binary.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. I'm equal opportunity on my bashing of stores. I have a MacBook too, and I still don't use the Apple App Store. I just don't.
Well, I mean, and super sidebar here, right? But often it's better for the developers, right? If it's paid software, if it's free software, then who cares? If it's paid software, they often make more money buying it directly from them than through an app store model as well, right? And then also previous comments about like updates at their leisure versus like app store approved updates and so forth.
Yeah.
So John, you made a comment a while ago that was interesting from a business perspective, which is they're not going to take this stuff out, even though technically if I'm CIO, I want this stuff out. Why is it not happening? Why is Windows 10 and Pro, which I think I'm using here, still have Xbox console in it? Why is there not enough people complaining that Microsoft, they got Candy Crush out of it? Why are these other things still in there?
Well, if you look at majority of it, it's cross-sell. I mean, it's what it comes down to. Microsoft selling Microsoft. If you're on your laptop and you have something pop up for Xbox, it's like, oh, what's this? Oh, I can do Xbox on my laptop too. It's I think it's more of a personal market niche than it is from a business side of the house. I mean, it's just, there's not going to be a lot of argument to take off their own things because, hey, it's ours. We know it's optimal. We know it's in there and it's trusted and it's handled. Candy Crush, it's third party. Oh, okay, we can see your argument. We don't want to have a lawsuit later on down the road if Candy Crush gets breached. But here it's, Microsoft selling Microsoft to the user.
Yeah.
And maybe, take the advice with a grain of salt if you are that company that put like Xboxes in every conference room and you love your Miracast, like sure, maybe make different decisions, right? But since I've never seen that company in the wild, right?
Oh, I
the
have.
Context, yeah, that we're talking in.
Yeah, I'd say the same. If you first open your image or your new laptop and the first thing you do is go install programs and you don't uninstall anything, we're probably not speaking your language right now.
And the other thing too, Andy, when you think about these applications, I mean, we really have seen a shift in technology market today. I mean, back when we were coming up, wearing sandals and walking in the dirt, building out these environments. Everything was built for the enterprise. Everything was focused and geared at the enterprise. And gradually over time now, it's the users that are bringing new apps, new softwares, new technologies in, because they're getting it off their phone. They're oh, this is so much easier when I do this or that they're now bringing those into the enterprise. So you're seeing, that's why we have like a Office OneDrive for personal use that they offer. Hey, we'll give you a terabyte for that, because then that user's in OneDrive. I'm used to it. And now I start making an argument inside the company. Hey, we should be using OneDrive. Look at everything I can do from it. So a lot of that, like I said, it's cross promotional. They're going to keep it there, and it's geared to that user to now, putting them into the enterprise versus the other way around.
Yeah. We heard a lot about consumerization of IT 3 years ago. We haven't heard that much lately.
I think we've all been a little busy.
Yeah.
Well, I would say I would say it's actually because it's over and done with, right? We live in that world now.
Right?
I'd agree. I mean, it used to be, you'll do whatever, Mr. User, you can do whatever we give you permissions to do. And now it's, yes, Mr. User, we'll make it so you can do that. It's totally different. Like, I don't know how many other industries have made a swing that drastic in the same amount of time.
The article goes on to talk about the downside of uninstalling the UWP applications, and really all it's saying is you won't have them when you might need them. I'll give you one example. I do use the Windows key G every once in a while when I want to record something, like I'm a gamer, but I'm actually recording something that's just work related. I don't have any other uses other than that particular one. I guess maybe if it's like we're talking about here, if a user's used to that working on their home PC and they go to use it for work and it's not there, then we might get a ticket opened maybe.
Yeah, it's funny. I've never even used that one, but that's interesting. I'll tell you one that I do use kind of on that same plane is I believe it's Control-Alt-S to do screenshots in Windows if you have OneNote.
Yeah.
So that one I use, and I use it all the time, like enough that I had to even think about what the keystroke was, because I just do it.
But is that part of the Universal Windows platform, or is that part of installing Office? Okay.
No, it's within the OS. You're looking at the list right now. It's a little bit further up, 2 up, right above people.
Yeah, there you go.
I would start a whole side podcast just covering keyboard shortcuts.
Yeah.
But like, Harvey, how does that compare to, I'm not a big OneNote user, but I do Windows Shift S for the next gen snipping tool.
Yeah.
How do those compare? Which one do you like there?
I don't know. I don't use the next gen snipping tool
because
I use the other one.
There we go.
It's funny, right? Because we're proving the point, right? To your user, they use what they're used to using, or they use what somebody else just showed them. As I watched Jira go and put keystrokes on his keyboard over there. But to that same point, right? We're talking through making sure that you optimize things, but there are things that, like Andy was just bringing up, that you still want to leave in place because it's what your users used to, right? We've gone away from you will do only what I give you access to do, to now, yes, we will make it do all of the things that you're used to it doing or that you want it to do, as long as they don't present some performance issue or security risk that we're not willing to take. If it's just a shortcut to do something that you can go and click and still do, I mean, you're probably going to leave the shortcut in there, because that's not taking away from your performance, but it could definitely take away from the user experience. And at this point, we have to have adoption.
Well,
go ahead.
I think that also has to be taken into consideration, because again, wrapping us back around again, we're talking about optimizing an image for virtualization and on a particular platform within Nutanix. I mean, that's something that we've got to say, okay, if these are items that are more important to our users, then we need to make sure we're doing that due diligence on the sizing and scoping of what our hardware is running to be able to handle this for the workload. But I think by default, a lot of admins are looking at these, and especially the last optimization as well, of things that you don't initially think about because it's already there, that, hey, we got to make this better and more efficient.
So guys, I mean, I'm just looking at the list here. I didn't realize it was this many. And if I'm security minded, like every one of our listeners should be at this point, I want these things out. I don't need Microsoft Zoom music and Zune. And I'm not talking Zoom, I'm talking Zune, which most of our listeners will have no idea what that even is. I want that stuff out. I mean, who knows how many vulnerabilities are left in those things that, you know, the human beings that wrote them could not have thought about when they wrote them.
That's not fair. You can't take away my Xbox app. I had it at my last job, and you can't do this to me. I can't do my job.
Well, you also look at that list, and there's also maps in there, Microsoft Maps. So now you've got an application that does GPS enablement. So yeah, I mean, definitely from a security standpoint, you want to take a look at this as well.
Today I learned that Windows has a Maps app. No, and I like that. I mean, the only real downside, the article cites of what's the downside to removing this stuff is, guess what? It's hard to reinstall when you remove it. I'm like, well, okay, yeah, that's kind of working as intended.
So yeah, that's actually a good point too. As you go through optimizing and taking some of these things off, you might want to keep a pristine copy hanging around just in case.
Well, I mean, that speaks to the more you have to prep your gold master image by hand, the less often you're going to want to do it, right? But when that is scripted, when it's a process, when it's a run book, boom, you know, doing that weekly is really just not painful, right? And then tweaking the recipe, you know, as you need to shift that baseline over time.
I do like this last section here, especially this first paragraph here, where it says, you know, yeah, get these things out of here if you want to, but don't forget to remove the shortcuts, because nothing worse than a user clicking on a shortcut expecting something to work and it not even being installed.
Right. That whole scenario where the user doesn't even know that something is gone, except the only thing they know is that, oh, I have this shortcut and the shortcut doesn't work.
It's as a truly like old fart type of comment. It's like, it's hard to imagine if you told somebody today that this company lost a lawsuit in the 90s over pre-installing software.
Well, and I believe that they even have in GitHub a script that will execute all of this for you to do your images. So
that's a pro tip.
Yeah.
Well, and that's you know, Jaira mentioned the lawsuit over the browser being installed, which I chuckle about that one all the time, because that'd be like telling, I don't know, Ford. No, that's like telling Tesla they can't install a radio when they've got all this other technology that's already built in there that drives you towards Tesla related services. And same applies for all the other manufacturers these days. But now, you know, we've got a situation where Microsoft still in Europe, I believe, has, or all over, has a edition that has to have not the browser installed, even though their browser is based on Chrome now, because the law said that you can't throw in your own software, 20 years ago now?
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while.
Might be more than that now, actually. Probably only feels like 20 years.
Well, guys, I appreciate you entertaining us with this one. And Jaira, we'll get back to the Nutanix stuff. We just, you know, a bunch of desktop guys. And this all very much applies to a desktop as a service VDI world, and trying to sort our way through a world of where we're running Windows and Microsoft putting all that stuff into the image. If not, then we'd all run Linux for our workloads.
Raspberry Pi.
This is the year, the Linux desktop. No, it's great. I love learning more too, right? So this stuff, I love that I get to learn from you all about these best practices.
What would happen if Microsoft made Microsoft made Office for Linux?
There'd be a lot more adoption.
Would there be a big step in that direction?
Would there? Do you think that's what's holding that back, Harvey? Not the where's the My Documents folder?
I don't think that's the only thing that's holding it back, but I think that's holding a lot of people back. I mean, ultimately, you know, we talked about what the number one app was in another podcast, and that's Windows. But like number 2, 3, 4, and 5 probably come from Microsoft Office. I mean, they're up there.
Excel, you exclude the OS, right? Which I totally get that Windows is an app, but yeah, like I've heard outside of that, it's Excel for sure.
Well, I take that question further. Are you stating that based upon as it relates to business?
Yes, I'm stating that as it relates to business.
Because again, going back to the comment earlier about the users now forcing businesses and the enterprises to refocus their application support, I could tell you this much: my kids don't even they don't even text anymore. You know, it's all done through other platforms. I mean, these young kids today, they're coming up and doing these newfangled things that I don't even understand. So I don't know if Office, it really is the holdback on that.
I mean, especially considering for that generation, right? We're talking about people raised on Google Docs, right? So word processing in a browser. And I had that thought when Harvey asked about well, Office is actually already in the browser, right? You only have to install it for full functionality. Because I'd been thinking earlier as I listened to y'all about what apps do I use day to day that I couldn't do in a browser. And I can't think of any. Like Mail, Zoom, of course, every web app out there. My email, all actually technically works in a browser.
So I got this up on the screen. I don't know if you guys can see it, where Microsoft is quietly creating a Linux distro. I don't know if it's for the desktop, right? Maybe it's just for servers. But there is rumors that they are using Linux for a future release of Windows.
Yeah, it would make sense.
It makes sense.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's probably 8 different benefits that come from that, if not more, right? Like, I'm sure all of Azure mostly runs on a Linux backend from the management plane. I'm sure there's also a huge benefit to having this is the Microsoft blessed distro to deploy Linux in Azure, right? Like speed, efficiency, security updates, right? One hand to shake for support. And then of course, yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, heck, you can install SSH as a Windows add-on now, right? Like Putty can be dead to you if you want it to, right? You just SSH, username @ right from the, old school cmd.exe command line, which even that's actually almost end of life, right? Like Microsoft will tell you don't use that anymore either. There's a whole new Windows shell, PowerShell. So yeah, makes a lot of sense. I need to go play with that.
Well, so here's one on that very line of conversation. Why did Microsoft rename it from Windows Virtual Desktop to Azure Virtual Desktop?
Well, because they're wrapping in multiple OSs.
Yeah, so because you're going to have Linux, and it wouldn't make sense to call it Windows Virtual Desktop anymore. The theories. All right, guys.
One quick thing, Andy, if you notice at the what's next here on the blog.
Yeah.
So it looks like we got another exciting one coming up. Services and scheduled tasks.
I might be on vacation that week.
Don't you get Andy started on automation.
Oh, I want to talk to you guys about that real quick. So I listened to a Bill Gates book recently. I highly recommend a documentary. I got it off of Audible. And he said this, and this is exactly what I should have told you guys. A inefficient task automated is bad. I don't remember exactly how I said it. And an efficient task automated is good. That's what I think. That's my thought.
Is that? I mean, I think I agree with that. I don't think Harvey and I were beating the drum for like, thou shalt go automate all your inefficient tasks.
No, I was just trying to figure out how to tell you guys where my head was at. Watching someone take something inefficient and automate it, which I've seen plenty of times, I would just rather just throw the whole thing away.
I mean, I would say true digital transformation involves revisiting your processes and tasks continually, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think we agree that don't have inefficient tasks.
Yes, please.
All right, gentlemen, I will do it again next week. Maybe we'll jump back into the Nutanix specific world. Jaira's got some hot, juicy stuff coming for us. Hey, Jaira, did you find out if I could release that podcast around what from a few weeks ago?
I'll have to let you know what I hear.
Unnamed.
All right. We got one waiting in the can that we can't get out of the can. All right, guys. Well,
problem
thanks a lot.
is
Oop.
we're just before our time. That's all. We're just before our time.
Yeah, they didn't want us letting the world know about some great new things. All right, gentlemen, thanks. I'm off to watch my daughter run cross country, and I should have wore shorts. All right,
Yeah.
have a good one.
Thanks.